The Compton Executioners, Los Banditos, the Little Red Devils, and the Jump Out Boys. The Jump Out Boys. Now, if I didn't know any better, I'd say these were just some new gangbanging cliques made up by teenagers with guns, but no. If you live in Los Angeles County, then you know that these are in fact gangs made by people with badges and qualified immunity from the law. Now, I ran across this fact, which has to be by far the scariest thing I've ever read while doing research for my last LA video. And when I first saw it, I was like, nah, that's cap. There's just no way. I grew up in the most corrupt city on this side of the planet, and I've never heard of anything like this. So I left it out knowing that if it was true, I'd have to make an entire video about it. And I still didn't want to believe it. Then I saw Channel 5 cover it, and I was like, nah, man, this cannot be true. That's when I did my own research, and per capita, Alaska, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Colorado see more killings by law enforcement officers than California. But Los Angeles as a city is by far number one. And I said, okay, LA is more populous than any other city, so this would kind of make sense, right? Wrong. The New York City metro area has more people in it than the entire Los Angeles County, and New York still ranks lower than Phoenix and Chicago, both of which combined can fit inside New York City population-wise. In 2019, 8 deputies from the LA County Sheriff's Department filed a lawsuit against the Banditos, a clique of over 20 police officers out of the East Los Angeles County Sheriff's Station, alleging that the Hispanic-only clique has a stranglehold over the communities east of downtown. Former Sheriff Alex Villanueva claimed that nothing was going on except maybe a little hazing. And this is the same guy that saw Tiger Woods crash his SUV while traveling twice the speed limit, found an empty unlabeled pill bottle in the car and still didn't perform any blood or alcohol tests, and claims that it was just an accident. He's also been accused of obstructing investigations by a commander of the sheriff's department, as well as retaliating against whistleblowers and several other things. Then we have the Compton Executioners and the Jump Out Boys, both of which are alleged to be gangs based on racism due to violence and also the fact that the executioners in particular don't allow black cops to join.
Can you repeat that question one more time, sir?
Do you have any ill feelings in general against African Americans?
I have feelings for African Americans, sir.
What are your feelings?
They're just human beings, sir.
Did you hear my question, sir? Do you have any ill feelings toward African Americans?
I do, sir.
Okay. Tell me about your feelings.
In 2012, deputies Samuel Gomez and Joshua Eklund arrested Gilberto Gutierrez for possession of a controlled substance. They took him to his house for a search. That's when deputies David Chavez and Lauren Swanson allegedly cuffed him to a bed and shot him. I say allegedly because they were found not guilty by homicide detectives, and they say Gutierrez reached for one of their service weapons, but medical evidence from the coroner's office is consistent with Gutierrez just being stood over and executed. The two deputies also testified under oath that they went and got their Grim Reaper tattoos together 6 months after the incident, which this has been known as a symbol used by the Jump Out Boys. The county, clearly not willing to prosecute the deputies, offered Gutierrez's family $2 million to settle before it went to a jury. The family declined and ended up losing the case. There's even been studies done to prove that this gang membership may have something to do with the prevalence of spousal abuse in relationships involving police officers. Here's a video by a woman who dated a Reaper, catching him trying to use an object to try to manipulate her door to get it to open.
Yeah. I'm going to.
This guy was fired and also rehired by the same Alex Villanueva I mentioned earlier. The Cavemen are another gang out of East Los Angeles, specifically Boyle Heights. They allegedly have a caveman mural on the wall of their conference room, and Sheriff Villanueva publicly acknowledged their existence, but he also stressed that he was never a member. The Linwood Vikings from the 90s were a white supremacist deputy gang out of the LASD station in the predominantly Hispanic city of Linwood, California, although I believe this station has now closed. But one of their symbols was 998, which is the police code for an officer-involved shooting. And every time I do a video on LA, the list of things that scare me about the city just continue to grow. Now, the Vikings are one of the most notorious of these deputy gangs because, among several things, they are accused of beating, killing, and illegally searching Latino and African American residents of Linwood in order to terrorize and intimidate the community. And this is not a conspiracy theory. A lot of this is well documented, and this creates multiple problems. We have groups of people that believe every police brutality incident is justified because the ones they hear about are involved with criminals and gang members, and these same people are against gangs, I also don't stand with gangs. They are a detriment in every way to our community. But what happens when the police that are meant to serve and protect are also the gang members? We're not talking about street gangs. We're talking about gang members that can use their immunity to intimidate an entire area. When a country is at war and they conduct airstrikes in civilian areas, the damage is indiscriminate. Coming from an area that's notorious for gangs, I can tell you that only 1 to 10% of each neighborhood is actually affiliated. These deputy gangs, however, still prey on the entire area. If your neighbor is a criminal and you a hard-working 9-to-5 civilian, you can potentially be a target just because of where you are. And I've seen this everywhere. In the small white town I went to college in, like many small predominantly white cities, drugs are a huge problem. Yet anyone can be subject to harassment. If you've never been anywhere, you probably don't know this, but the small town white kids are much more afraid of the police than black and Latino kids in the city. But this is not what the police are meant to be. In Chicago, as a teenager, the police will hop out on us 5 deep while we're walking just to harass and search for weapons, despite the fact that none of us were gang members. But I can't fault the police anywhere for being cautious. It's a dangerous job and they are criminally underpaid. LA County is especially dangerous, and I've always heard the same police slander of the biggest gang on the streets being the cops, but this takes on a more literal meaning in LA. Like the more organized gangs back in the day, some of these deputy gangs can have initiation rituals that may involve taking a life in order to prove your worth, like a Sicario. In 2017 alone, police misconduct in LA cost $80 million to the taxpayer. LA has always been a police brutality capital, but I never understood why, and I probably never will. Just due to the fact that half the people that are paid to investigate corruption like this are probably in on it, we'll never probably get all of the facts. Some members of these deputy gangs have been convicted, like Paul Tanaka, a former undersheriff who tried to intimidate an FBI agent. Definitely not a smart move, and he ended up serving 4 years. Now, of course, the existence of these deputy gangs does not mean that all cops are bad. There are police officers in LA and every city that genuinely put their life on the line every day to make a difference. But coming into a job where a powerful and intimidating clique holds control is just as challenging no matter where you work. There's even allegations that these gangs will withhold backup for officers who are not on the same page as them, possibly costing someone their life. And when it gets to that point, we have to remember that all cops are still human beings that have to protect themselves above anyone else. The banditos in particular have been accused of taxing trainees. For men, they are demanded to buy bosses expensive meals and gifts, and for female trainees, they are allegedly taxed by having to consent to sex with established members, which is not much different from what Diddy is being accused of, by the way. But all of this works in their favor, as outsiders will many times justify cruel actions by the police as just part of their job, while things like this going on in the background are actively corrupting new trainees by making them think that this is just the way things are. They've even allegedly had gang brawls with unaffiliated deputies in Kennedy Hall. Now, I couldn't end this video without confirming that LA was the only city with deputy gangs because, again, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And surprise, surprise, right? There are more, apparently. There's allegedly 160 different crews in the Chicago police force. This only makes up about 4% of the entire force, but that's still a bit too much for me. And there was a study done on the complaint data from police officers in Chicago, New York, and Philly. And while thousands of cops received at least one complaint, 10% of them accounted for 1/3 of all complaints. Pretty much sounds like the ratio of what a gang does in a community. And I must admit, when I was a baby and before I was born, I'm well aware that some Chicago cops would pull up to the project buildings before they all got demolished and demand a cut of the daily proceeds from drug dealing. And they shut it down. They wouldn't go away until they got paid. It isn't called Crook County for nothing. And seeing the CPD firsthand, I know that some of those guys are loose screws. Haven't never seen the NYPD in action, but I'm sure some of them are too. And some of these guys are not much different than the kids running around gangbanging. Again, it's not all of them, but this just has to be something that comes naturally to big cities. When you're surrounded by millions of people and you feel like too many of them are against you, of course you'd form some type of coalition of people you trust to protect your back. This is probably why people who have never been in danger before don't understand gangs. That doesn't make it right, of course, but unfortunately, too many people see forming crews like this as a survival mechanism, when in reality, the bigger you get, the more power you acquire, and power corrupts the best of us. So there we have it, the deputy gangs of LA, and I also left you with the unsettling realization that these gangs might exist in your city too. So, I'm sorry. Anyways, thank you guys for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.